All right, welcome back to another episode of the Investor Frame podcast. I've got a new friend of mine, Kyle Doney here, and I'm extremely excited to have you in because I've gotten to watch you from afar with LVN Real Estate. As I got into this Denver market, you were a competitor to me, and I was like, "Ooh, they have it really dialed in," and I could see you on the search page when I type in buy my house fast, sell my house fast in Denver. And so I've heard a lot about you from a lot of other folks in the industry. You have a great reputation here in Denver, so I'm extremely excited to have you in here and have you tell your story about how you got into real estate, how you're using it to help you get closer to the things that you want. And yeah, welcome in.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Glad to chat.
Awesome, man. So let's start by giving a little bit of backstory here. I know a little bit about your background, but why don't you tell everybody about how you got from, into real estate up to the first point, right? You started in the military. Tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
Condensed version. Yeah, I started in the military right out of high school. I just joined the Air Force and did that, and realized real fast that I don't like authority. I don't like being told what to do. Like I'm the exact opposite of that. And so while I was in, it wasn't the most fun thing for me. Like I just didn't like the how I was managed, and I just didn't like the military. It's not my personality. So
Hmm.
more free spirited than that. But did it? I ended up doing 6 years, and got out, went to college, and during college I was trying to figure out like, hey, what am I going to do next? I kind of went to college because it was free, and it was like that's what you do, right?
What'd you do in
And
college?
I studied business and Parks and Rec management.
Nice.
And so I graduated from East Carolina. I was in North Carolina at the time, and got done with that and said, all right, what am I going to do next? And started researching businesses. Like, what business can I buy? I knew that I wanted to be my own boss and do my own thing, and that led me to buying a existing vending machine business.
Really?
And so yeah, so I moved from North Carolina. My brother was already living out here in Denver, and I found a business in Boulder, vending machine business. I bought it. I pretty much took like my life savings, almost everything I had, and spent it on this business. Spent the rest of it to move out here and just like live. And that's what got me into entrepreneurship. And so started kind of just learning what it's like to run a business through that. I did that for 5 years. I had a phone business as well that I turned in. It was like a college hustle. I was flipping phones and turned that into a business and grew that at the same time as the vending.
It's like a definition of an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, right? Like coming
yeah,
out, buying vending machine businesses and flipping phones. That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Where were your vending machines? Were they just in
Uh,
Boulder?
yeah, mostly Boulder. So they were in like all the Boulder rec centers. I had like contracts with Erie. I had a bunch of different like just little. I had some libraries. I had a bunch of
Was it
different
just you?
locations. Just me. I ended up hiring one employee that stocked the machines. Like it
Hmm.
got to the point where I was so busy in the phone business and real estate. I was dabbling in real estate at the time as well. So I had three different things going. I ended up hiring somebody that to stock the machines to pull myself out of that, and so that freed up a ton of time in the vending business. But it was hard. It was really hard to scale. Like that business is super. It's pretty cutthroat. Like the contracts and the bidding that you have to do to get to secure these locations. Um, you have to spend a lot of money to secure these contracts.
And it's a
They're
commodity game.
yeah, they're government contracts, and so you're competing against like these massive companies that can come in and pay them these huge amounts of money to win a contract and put their machines in there.
Yeah.
So it's tough as a small business to compete. I did grow the business. I doubled the size of it and did well for. I had that business for 5 years and I sold it, and pretty much that was around 2000. I started that in 2012 and I sold it in 17, and then I was dabbling in real estate as well. I started real estate in 2013. And so I was doing that for a couple of years already, flipping houses, buying rentals at the same time as doing these other businesses.
Hmm.
And then in 17, I went all in and just like put all my time into real estate. And that's how I went.
So you got rid of these other two businesses. Is it because they just weren't as profitable? You didn't enjoy them? One of the things on this show, we talk about the investor frame, right? Which is like, well, knowing what I know now, would I choose to opt into my current situation? And it seems like you'd made a decision where you're like, well, knowing what I know now, I need to get rid of these businesses and focus on something better.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was pretty much like, all right, I can buy this house and flip this house and make X dollars. and do a couple of these a year. And I didn't, it didn't take very many to make more than the vending machine business was making. And I had all these machines all over the place, was getting all these customer service calls of my chips are stuck. It ate my money. Like just the stuff you don't want to deal with, right? Like you're getting all these over $1, $2 or whatever, right? And so it's like I'm like done with this, right? And yeah, you can outsource a certain amount of it to employees, but it was more of a headache than it was worth.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got into real estate and started flipping houses, that it didn't make sense to keep going with it. And like I said about trying to grow it, securing the contracts was difficult, and you just have to have so many machines all over the place that it didn't align with what I wanted as far as a business.
Mm-hmm.
So I came to that realization eventually and ended up moving on.
Well, what a great time to get into flipping, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The market was just going like this in 2017, just ripping.
Yeah.
That was right when I was starting to get into real estate.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, look at this. Real estate's just running. So what was your first, the process of getting into flipping? What was that like? Sourcing deals, sourcing money, executing on the projects. It doesn't sound like you had a ton of construction experience.
No.
So how did you put these deals together?
So when I got going in it, luckily the businesses that I had, the phone business and the vending machine business, they were doing well enough where I had extra cash. Like I was making good money, especially in the phone business. I was doing really well in that, and so I had cash at the time. So I didn't get in with nothing. Luckily I had a base to start with, and so back then it was, when I got in it was 2013, and stuff was a lot cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
right? The house that I could buy for 200 grand is now 500 grand. Like it was a different.
Yeah.
It took less capital, and so I had that capital already, and that helped me kind of get into it. But it's kind of the same as most people getting into it, borrowing a lot of money, a lot of hard money. I was using. And, I was getting lines of credit at the time as well against the rentals that I had started accumulating over the years. So I had a number of rentals. So when I went into it full time, I had lines of credit against these rentals that I could use as well.
Yeah.
In conjunction with the hard money, which allowed me to kind of scale and keep the ball rolling.
Yeah. And was this all here in Denver? Because I know you do a lot of deals out in Golden. Where did you start? What part of town were you in?
So when I started, where was I? I was in, I think Arvada. Yeah, I was in Arvada. Arvada is where I started. So, Arvada was the first house that I bought, and that was like a house hack. I bought a house. I used my VA loan, and house hacked. I rented out rooms to my friends. Like I had a number of friends that moved out here and ended up just living with me, and so.
Did you know it was called house hacking back then?
No.
Because when I did it, I didn't know that was a term. No. That was
I learned that later.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
Somebody wrote a book on it, and I was like, I've done that.
Exactly. But that got me rolling. Like that covered my mortgage. Just renting out rooms.
Love it.
And then I bought like my first rental up in Greeley. I love telling the story about it because it was so cheap, and people can't believe it now when I say it. Like I bought a single family house for 25 grand.
Whoa.
And like people if you're in Colorado, you're like, what? Like that's nuts. But that was my first like flip and rental. Like I rehabbed it and then rented it out. I still own it today. And I learned a lot of lessons on that one. But yeah, you're right. I knew nothing about construction, no background in it. I'm really not good at fixing things. I'm not good at like just swinging a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew nothing about it, and just kind of. I still don't know how to build anything, but I know what stuff should look like and how it should be, and I understand construction enough to do a lot of flips.
Construction's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It really is. It's a continuous learning process. Like
it is.
Always learning, and I think the key to construction is hiring people that know what they're doing, and luckily I have that.
Mm-hmm.
But hiring people that know what they're doing and leaning on them, and guys like us that are running the business, like we're not going to learn every detail of construction if you didn't grow up in it and you weren't building houses. Like it's an uphill battle.
It really is. So what does the evolution of LVN look like? Because how did that play in? You were flipping some houses, and like you must have made this switch to, you're like, there's something to this. Like I'm turning these deals over. How did that transition go from, you were like, all right, we're flipping a couple houses to now I've got a business?
It was slow. I mean, like when it started, like I said, I was doing these other businesses, so it was just a side hustle.
Yeah.
Like it just a hustle, really.
Right.
It was like, all right, I need some passive. Like I knew I wanted or needed passive income, and so it started with just wanting to buy more rentals. And so I didn't start flipping. I started buying rentals and accumulating those.
Got it.
And then that turned into flipping. That turned into like, oh, I found this deal in this one, but this doesn't make sense as a rental. Like I should just sell this or wholesale it or whatever. And so it kind of led from buying rentals into around 2015. I think 2015 is when I wholesaled my first deal. And wholesaler was like, oh, cool. We made like a grip of cash, like just selling a contract, right? And it was like, this is neat. This is
really neat.
Yeah. Like with the rentals, like you're getting like whatever, a couple $100 a month if you have a mortgage on it. And it doesn't feel like you're making anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just such a slow growth on rentals.
Yeah.
But I think when we did that wholesale, I had a partner in my business at the time. And when we did that wholesale, like, I want to say we made like 50 grand on it. And we split it and we're like, whoa,
this is amazing.
Like, this is big. Like, and that's still a great number. That's still a huge wholesale
for sure
right now, even. But I think that's when it clicked of like, you know what, I need to put more energy into this because it takes a lot. I got to sell a lot of phones. I got to sell a lot of snacks to make that kind of money. And so I need to really dig into this and figure out like, how does this work? And from there, it was just kind of like a hustle. Finding houses, and then we just started building a team and scaling from there.
So it started as just you, and I know that you're also involved with a couple masterminds and things like this. How did that play into how you built your business? And I'll preface this by saying there's a lot of people that are out there that will tell you how to run this business. It's not like it's rocket science.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to figure out how to do it and align with the things that you actually want.
Yeah.
So what was that process like for you, learning the business from, other people and then taking it back and applying it?
Yeah, I mean, getting around like people that were actually ahead of me was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was going to some events. I don't know what year I started going to events, but I remember when I first joined a mastermind and first started going to like one-off, 2 or 3 day events and meeting people, that helped immensely, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm hearing other people's stories. Like before that, it's just reading on Bigger Pockets and reading online and, watching whatever, YouTube and whatever's out there. And there was less out there at the time. There's still a lot out there, but not near as much information as now. But like just going to those events and having those conversations and hearing what other guys are doing to get deals and how they're growing, how they're hiring, how they're scaling a business made a massive difference once I started doing that. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started doing way more events and paying for education in 2017. Like when I went full time is when I really started dumping money into education. And before then, it was kind of a foreign concept. Like, oh, I'm going to spend X thousands of dollars to be a part of this. Like, it was hard to understand.
Yeah.
Previously, but it made sense as I kept going, and that's why I still go to stuff and continue to pay to learn.
Yeah. So, what does your business look like now?
So now, as far as like company and size and what we do, so I would say like our primary business model right now is fix and flip. We do a lot of fix and flip. Every year I'm buying rentals as well. Like I buy a number of rentals. Generally that's been like single family to small multi. I started buying commercial property a couple of years ago as well, and trying to get into that world. Mm-hmm. But mainly we're a fix and flip company. I want to say we're at 7 internal employees right now.
Okay.
And that's project managers, sales guys, assistant, there's
marketing and
like a couple internal people that help run everything. And so we're a pretty small company. We're buying roughly 50 houses a year for the past several years. I want to say the past 3 or 4 years in a row, we've been around that number. Mm-hmm. And that's a mix of buying rentals, flipping, wholetailing, maybe a few wholesales. Like we'll wholesale a few off. Hasn't been a primary focus. But yeah, we're mostly a flip company at the moment. And just trying different avenues out in real estate as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I started buying commercial a couple years ago, just digging into that world. Does it make sense? I start with just kind of same thing as how I got into it. Like I'm buying a property here, buying a property there, and just learning the game, and figuring out if it makes sense. I started developing a couple years ago, and
That duplex you did in Golden,
yeah,
real nice.
Yeah, we built 2 duplexes in Golden, and that's not all me. I have a partner that really like led the charge on that. Um, but that's like another avenue that I want to learn. I want to understand, like, does it make sense for me to go try to build a 40-unit apartment building? Does that make sense? I don't know. Let's start with doing these duplexes and see how it goes, see if I like it. And so that's what I'm doing. I built a couple duplexes. I got another one that we just got approved, and we're starting on that one. Should be in a couple months once we get permits, and just learning that game.
Yeah.
So figuring out where the business is going is it can be a challenge, right? Because there's all these different worlds of real estate to get into. There's so many. But I think I've been flipping long enough now where I'm like, what's next?
Yeah.
Like where do I evolve to, and like what do I do next in this world?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're bringing up a really interesting point. When I got into real estate, I used to say it's like I need to press all these buttons because I just need to see what happens when I press it.
Yeah.
I need to see, is this something that I like? Is this something that I hate? Is this something I could see doing for a long term? Now we have this phrase that we use inside of our community and the Certainty Operating System. We say we want to, if you're doing something new, absence what my mentor Dan calls a preponderance of data, meaning like if you don't have data for whether or not you've done something, you're trying to do something new, well, then we need to take micro steps, right? So what can we do that can give us some feedback so we don't go all in on something? We can, kind of, I've heard it also explained as like a soft offense. Like we want to kind of push on things and see what gives.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you're kind of doing right now.
Dabbling.
Lightly pressing on things,
Yeah.
See if I like this, see if I don't,
Yeah.
Let's see what gives kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've done a number of different type of deals. Like I did a land deal, where I started going through the entitlement process and looking at just building or having different lots and selling off the lots, trying to figure out, do I actually build this? Do I not? Ended up selling that land, right? But that was an experience, like just working with engineers and figuring out how do you take a piece of raw dirt and turn it into something that you could go sell to a big developer.
Yeah.
Or do it myself, right? Like, how do I get there? And so I bought that deal. We did a manufactured home build that we're still working on getting to completion. Just another world, right? It's like, how do I buy a piece of dirt, put a manufactured home on it, and make a profit out of it? Like, how does this work? So I'm doing all these like little random things. But
land is such a shiny object. Anytime I hear somebody talk about land, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no toilets, there's no tenants, there's no foundations, there's none of this stuff.
Yeah.
This sounds appealing, but it's not as simple as it sounds,
hard.
right?
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, working with cities is so difficult. Like getting something from raw dirt into something that you can go build a house on. It takes so much time, so much money, and it's so much risk. Like tons of risk with it. So it's a whole different world.
Hard to get financing on types of deals like that.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. Like you bring it to a bank and they're like,
very speculative.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Go find some private money or use your own money.
Yeah, and they'll lend on them, right? But they want, you have to have probably 50% in roughly.
Yeah.
Like that's the number I hear a lot.
Yeah.
Like you're putting 50% in before before we give you a dime. So it's takes a lot of capital to do those deals as well. It's a different type of thing.
Well, so you have a flipping business, and I find that I have just absolutely bombed almost every single flip I've ever done. Like the first flip, I think we made like 20 grand.
Yeah.
But for the amount of time and energy I put into it, I was like, that wasn't worth it.
No.
We did another one that we ended up getting hit with a $25,000 foundation repair. There was a horizontal crack around the whole place, and it's a long story. Never should have bought that deal in the first place. But, my experience has been it's hard to find the right construction partners and contractors to trust. We've gotten burned by multiple contractors.
Yeah.
You just don't know what you don't know. So the fact that you've been able to build that business is very, as someone who's tried to build it, I'm
Yeah.
like, man, that's impressive.
Yeah.
What is the secret to a flipping business?
That is a great question. I there's so many gotchas in flipping,
Yeah.
right? Like there's so many things.
The
you have to
margin of
look-
error is low.
Yeah, like it is a hard business. Now I will say, like during the last 3 years, it's been pretty easy. Like
Yeah.
you could screw up literally everything and still make money.
Except for me.
that's crazy. I don't know how you're doing that.
That's a story for another podcast. But
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, flipping's been pretty good for the past couple of years, just because
Yeah.
the market has been going up so rapidly.
Yep.
You can make the mistakes and you can just eat it.
Yeah.
Right now, more than ever, like I'm really slowing down on flips a little bit to kind of build our processes and our systems and get the right people in. And so that's where we're at right now, is working on just kind of like the internal part of it. Like we need to get better internally to run smoother.
Yeah.
And
It's not always like pressing on the gas. It's sometimes like take your foot off the brake.
Yeah, 100%.
Like you
Yeah.
got to eliminate the friction before we're gonna press forward.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're still doing a good number of flips, and we buy a couple a month and flip still. But I'm really realizing that like internally, like we need to get some better processes and systems. But to answer your question on like how have I been successful in these flips over the years, I think I've kind of had like a model and I've stuck to it as far as like what I'm buying. And that's mostly the starter home type of stuff. And so I haven't taken huge risk with like buying a $1 million house and doing a massive, big renovation and going like super spec.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a piece of it. Like I've had kind of our buy box that we buy in, and I've stuck to it. And that's one thing. I think the other thing is just being really careful of what I buy. Like I have numbers that I want to buy at, and I try to get a really good idea of like what is the rehab going to be going into this. And so before I ever buy it, like I have a pretty good idea of what's going to go into it, and so I know how much spread I have on it, if it's going to make sense or not. And so I think a lot of people get into it and they don't really know that. They have no idea if it's going to be 70 grand or 120 grand. They just don't know. Like you didn't see that horizontal crack, right? Like I would have saw that before I bought that house. That hasn't happened to me, right? Yeah. Luckily, knock on wood. And I'm not trying to.
We still got out of it with our shirts. We made like 15 on it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, again, not worth my time.
Yeah. No, that's totally not worth doing a flip for that. Like there's so much risk. There's so much headache in flips. But I think a lot of it is just like due diligence going into it. You got to really know going into it, like, hey, this does make sense to buy. Like, I know we're good on this. Like, if worst case scenario, if we don't even flip it, like, I'm going to be able to sell it and make money.
Yeah.
And so I try to be able to buy stuff where I can get out of it. Like, if I decide not to flip it, we don't have the crews, we don't have the capacity, whatever, we could still sell it and make a profit. I could wholesale it. I could just put it on the MLS, wholesale it, and still get out of it. I mean, that's a big piece of it. Just buying right and knowing what your numbers are to get it to the point of what you can sell it at.
Well, let me get your opinion on why people don't do those things.
Yeah.
I had, in my first couple of years, a problem with my own ego getting in the way of deals. I want to compete. I want to keep up with the other guys I see in my market and at these masterminds. Well, they're doing a couple flips a month.
Yeah.
I was like, what? So I had this like urgency that I would manufacture in my brain.
Yeah.
Like, you got to buy it. You got to find something. You have to do deals.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a result of being an inexperienced business owner.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
It's just the fact that you're not letting your emotions get in the way of like, it would be really cool to flip this $1 million house in Golden or Sloan's Lake or some really nice neighborhood. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't fit my buy box.
Yeah.
I'm now starting to realize if you want to run a business at a high level, you have to have non-negotiable. If it doesn't fit this, we're not doing it. And that stuff has to get determined ahead of time, because what you'll try to do is you'll be like, I can make that work.
Yeah.
I can get this, right?
Yeah.
And you start, again, to me, it all drove back to my own ego, which is what got in my own way. So how do you
say no? You got to be able to say no, right? Like people send me stuff and I can look at it pretty quick and be like, nope. And nope. I can say no and not worry about it because I know what my criteria is when I want to buy. Or I can shoot them back a message and say, I'll buy it if it's at X number.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the number. Like,
And
yeah, it's like,
um, my one of my coaches says that the number one word in a champion's vocabulary is restraint,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
being able to say no. Sometimes missing an opportunity is is better than like this rushing, trying to just do deals to keep up. It's an
yeah.
ego game.
Oh yeah,
So
you'll just implode. Like if you're
yeah,
if like I've seen it. Like I've seen
yep,
the guys come in and out of this market. I've been doing this long enough now
yeah,
where I see guys coming to Denver. They buy a bunch of stuff. They start buying from like these big wholesale companies, paying too much money, not underwriting it correctly, and like they're gone in a matter of no time. Like where'd that guy go? He's not in the business anymore. Like
yeah.
you see it so often. It's a hard business.
It is
Fix and flip is not an easy business.
right.
I think there's a lot of gurus that sell it as easy and think it's easy, but like there is so many ways to lose money in
Yes.
doing fix and flip. Um, you got to be on point, and so like I think it all there's so many. It's beyond just the flip, right? Like for us, I mean, I'm not buying off these big wholesale companies. Like I'm sourcing the deal,
For
so
sure.
that's a big piece of it,
Yep.
right? Like I'm going direct to seller. I have sales guys, and we do marketing.
Yep.
And so that helps right there alone, right? Like I have a bigger margin by doing that. It costs me money to get those deals, but I'm not buying off the guy that's marking it up all the way. Like I'm buying it at a lower price. So I have the spread there.
I got a question for you. How do you pay your sales guys when you're keeping the deal? Do you pay them on profit on the backside? Do you pay them a fee up front?
Like if I keep it as a rental, you're saying?
Well, so like you're keeping it as a flip or a rental. You're
Yeah. So,
keeping the deal. So there's not.
yeah.
We have wholesale transactions because we're either primarily doing wholesaling, retail, we do novations and stuff like that, or we're doing big developments.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how do you compensate your team for those types of deals?
Yeah. So if it's a rental, we just pretty much treat it as if it were a flip, right? So if I'm buying a rental, it's the same. It's almost the same numbers. Like I want the margin there where if I rent it and I decide to sell it in a year, I could sell it and make the same
Yeah.
as I would flipping it,
Hmm.
right? So we're just gonna take basically a spreadsheet and estimate out what would the profit be on this if we were to sell it.
Got it.
How much would we put into it? How much would we? What are the agent costs? What are the holding costs? Et cetera, et cetera. What's the net number that we think it would make? And then they get paid a percentage on that.
Yep.
And so
Makes
that's
sense.
how it works on rentals.
Yeah.
On flips, um, there's a decision to be made for the sales guy. Like if he wants the money up front, he's going to take a lesser commission. So the day we close, I'll pay him the day we close on an estimated profit, what we think we're going to make, but it's going to be at a lower commission.
Yeah.
Because there's no guarantees.
Yep.
Right. Especially right now with the market.
What do they do?
changing.
They take the money on the front,
No,
or
they
they take it
wait.
on the back?
They always wait.
That's a good team. That's a good team right there.
Yeah. So if it if we flip it, then they're going to get paid whatever 4 or 6 months down the line when it actually sells,
Mhm.
get the full commission amount.
That's cool.
So
Well, I want to ask you a little bit now about your your solvable problem. So
Yeah.
we have this term, around solvable problem, and the idea here is we should be using the businesses and the investments and the things that we do actively to help us get closer to the things that we want in life.
mhm.
And I know you're a big skier. You're a boarder or skier?
Border.
Border.
Yeah,
Okay. We call them knuckle draggers. So
yeah.
I haven't been up yet this year, man. I need to get
Yeah,
out.
You gotta get some days in. It's
I know there's
snowing.
been some good snow up there.
Yeah, it's snowing for sure.
So like how have you designed your business and your investments so that you can do these things? Because I know every time I see you, it's like on social media or whatever, like you're up there skiing or you're boarding or doing whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
biking or anything like that. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have these grandiose visions of, oh, I want financial, freedom.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that is something to aspire to, certainly. But
Yeah.
the process and the journey is really not as simple as that.
Yeah.
But yeah, how are you aligning your business and your investments to help you do the things that you want to do in life?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I being in business 10 years now. I started in 2012 with the vending stuff.
Hmm.
I've worked my ass off.
Yep.
And like, there's been times where like I've worked and worked and worked and did not take a vacation, did not take a break, didn't do my hobbies to the extent that I want to do them. it's a work in progress. Like I'm still working on that, and that's part of building out a team that can handle things for me. Um, but there's no doubt that I still put in a ton of hours.
Yeah.
Like it's just where I'm at right now, and I am working on kind of controlling like the amount of hours I put in and trying to get those down. And that's through hiring and not having to like take on that extra flip and push it like we were just talking about. Like if it doesn't make sense, like I'm not going to take it on just for the sake of adding another number and saying, oh, I did whatever 51 this year instead of 50 last year. Like I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I don't care if I do 53 or 51 or 4. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like I'm gonna do what makes sense, what we can handle. And so um, I definitely have made an effort more recently, in more recent years, probably the last 5 years, to do more of my hobbies, take vacations, like just do the things I want to do. Last year, I went on like a 5 week road trip across country
That's
in my
awesome.
van. Like I bought a van, like a camper van, and just like went across the country and rode a lot of mountain bike and like just did what I wanted to do, saw new stuff. And so that's a big motivation for me, is that uh, I want to do more of that, right? And so I want to build a better business. That growth is important. Like I still want the business to grow. I do want to do more. I do want to do better. Like that's just in me.
Yeah.
Like I want to build a better business, do bigger deals, like do cool stuff, right? But at the same time, like I don't want to get to whatever. I don't want to be 50 years old and look back and be like, damn, I should have rode way more mountain bike or snowboarded more or rode more motocross. Like now I'm like, now I don't got the time because I got kids and I'm older and like,
Yeah.
I don't feel up to it as much anymore. So I'm trying to keep doing all that stuff, but it comes back to like building a good team.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I'm at in business right now is focused on building a good team, having good systems, having good processes. And by doing that, if I can accomplish that, which is what I'm working on and growing, then I can do more of the stuff that I want to do.
Yeah.
And still have an awesome business,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal. And it's a work in progress. Like it takes time, but I for sure like try to get out and like do my hobbies. Like I realize it. Like if I don't, I set goals for my hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to ride X miles this year, right? Like I set a goal. I want to ride 2,000 miles this year.
Yeah.
I'm close. I'm not quite there, but like I've rode a lot of miles this year. You know?
That's awesome, man.
So I think you've got to set goals in your personal life and your business life and push towards both of them.
And I couldn't agree more. Business is one of these things where, it's hard for people that have W-2 jobs, I think, to relate. I have a hard time relating because I don't look at my work as this like, it's like indentured servant is almost what it feels like sometimes with people who have these jobs. Like they don't like their job.
Yeah.
They're just doing it to earn a paycheck, and they spend, they're working for the weekend kind of thing, right? Where they have their hobbies and all that sort of stuff, but they're doing the job simply to make money.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time relating to that because I really enjoy building these businesses and doing these things. The problem comes when you build the business in a way that gets you further away from the other side of the fence that you want. You can still, I say I like to play business as a sport, which means I just like I love to play basketball and all these types of things. Like that's what business is for me.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not being forced to do this. I like doing this.
Yeah.
But the trap that I've, found in my own life is that oftentimes I'll just, chase more and more and more and more and more. Yeah. And that can come with trade-offs.
Yeah.
It can get you further away from other things that you value, more in your life. And in fact, I'm working on that more in my life because I've got to have the other side to balance me out.
Yeah. You have to, or you start feeling like overwhelmed in the day-to-day. Like I know for a fact, like if I do better in my business life if I take whatever, an hour or 2 hours and I go to the gym or I go for a bike ride or I go for a hike or I like do something, like I feel better, right? And I come back refreshed and I just operate better. If I'm just working 12 hours a day for days in a row, like you start to feel different, you know? Like it's so important to like get out, do something, get some fresh air, like exercise, move, do the hobbies, do the things that make you feel good. Because you start like, if you're working too much, you're like, well, what's the point of working. Like, why? What am I working for?
Right.
Why am I working all these hours? Like, it's for a reason, right?
Yeah.
You know, like it should be for a reason.
Well, and I want to talk about reliability for a second, because what keeps me from doing the things, because like I'm where you are at and the type of business you're building is what I'm trying to build right now. And in order to have that type of a business, it needs to be reliable and predictable. Meaning, like, it's really tough to take off and catch the storm in Breck if you don't know whether you're going to need to work 2 hours or 8 hours or 16 hours in a day.
Yeah.
You know, if your business is, you know, it's the phrase like scaling chaos.
Yeah.
Can't scale chaos. So first you have to get your business reliable. It has to be reliable. You need to be able to predict accurately. I know how much I'm going to spend on this business. I know when I'm going to spend it.
Yeah.
And that is what allows you to go do whatever else it is that you want to do. Whether that's, you know, snowboard, whether that's mountain biking, whether that's building another business because that's what you enjoy to do, right? Playing business as a sport kind of a thing. But you can't do that unless you've got a predictable business. So, you know, what is, and again, this is why I'm the flipping stuff, right? It's just so unpredictable for me. But it sounds like you've got so much reliability built into that. So kudos for you on that. And I guess, you know, what is the focus now? Is it continuing to build more reliability into that business, or is it you've got the reliability, now it's like, I want to grow this business?
Yeah, I think the reliability does come with scale as well. Like, think about it like this: if you're doing 3 flips a year, right, you're getting paid 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
You got
That's very true.
Like, it's not enough, right? So if you want reliability, you have to scale. Yeah. You know, like, you have to have deals closing. And so for me, like, I do need to do a certain amount of deals to have that reliability, because I need stuff closing every month. I want stuff closing. I want money coming in. Right. If I'm only doing a couple a year, that's tough. That's stressful. Yeah. Like, there's just not enough paychecks coming in. So with flipping, I think scale is important if you don't have something else. Luckily, I do have rentals that helps, but those are like a separate whole bucket. I just look at the kind of the flipping as far as like reliability goes. I want to keep up the volume in order to have paychecks coming in. So I think scale does matter to a degree on the flipping world if you want to feel like it's reliable. You got to keep buying properties. Like,
what's that like threshold? Because, you know, it's like you don't see a lot of guys doing 10 flips a year. It's like they're either doing 2 or 3 or 4, or they're doing 50 like you.
Yeah. The threshold, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that we have to close 5 deals a month, but if we're closing 5 deals a month, like, I feel pretty good, right? But if we're closing 2, if we get 2 houses a month, like, that can, as long as we're doing that every single month, like, that's gonna be consistent. Now, if we go 2 or 3 months and we don't close any deals, we're gonna have a big drop off, right? And I'm gonna have no money coming in, but I'm gonna have a lot going out, you know, because I got employees and rehabs are expensive, right? Like, you're buying tons of material, you're paying. There's so many checks going out at all times. It's a lot of cash management is important. Like, it takes a lot of cash to run the business.
It's very cash intensive business.
It's cash intensive. Yeah. Like, you start sweating real quick.
I'm sweating right now. It's about one of our deals right now. I'm like, man, So
I mean, I think a couple deals a month keeps us going. Like, if I can have, I like to see 5 deals close a month. Now, am I doing that right now? No, because the market has slowed down. I was doing that for a good amount of time, but right now, like, the market has slowed. Things are a little bit different, and so if I'm closing 2 a month right now, 3 a month, 2 or 3 a month, that's consistent enough to keep the business going, keep it growing. I'm able to make hires. I'm able to, like, keep moving by doing that. So if I had to put a number to it, that's what I would say it is currently. And I think there's opportunities coming, and so I'm okay with it being a little bit slow right now. But it's a little bit of a weird time. And so
it is a weird time.
I'm kind of trying to, like, just take it as it comes, right? And like, what's going to happen in this market.
And it's easy to be like fearful of the boogeyman that hasn't quite come yet. You know, we see interest rates doing this, and everyone's talking about recession, and everyone's saying all these sort of things, and it's like, all right, well, that's fine. Like maybe we try to get leaner,
Yeah.
maybe we pull back, we hold a little bit of cash and liquidity so we can take advantage of this. But I'm trying to tell myself, first of all, it's this battle I go in my head where I'm like listening to the guys who have been around for all the market cycles, and
Yeah.
they're saying one thing,
Yeah.
but my brain is telling me, are they just are you just trying to be, don't be afraid of the boogeyman under your
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You still got to operate your business, you still got to make good decisions, we still got to make revenue.
Yeah.
And that's challenging.
Yeah. I mean, if unless you want to like cut your team and start back from zero, like you got to keep buying.
You got to keep finding a way to move forward.
Yeah. You can't just stop.
Right.
Like if you just stop and you're like, oh, the market's going down, which it is, right? Like there's certain areas right now in Denver that are like tanking,
Big time.
like, and so you just got to know what those areas are, right? But like you can't just be fearful and be like, all right, time out, I'm done buying. Because if you have employees and you have a team and
Yeah.
you want predictability and you want scale,
Just got to buy deeper, right?
you just got to keep going. I mean, if the deals aren't there, you can't force it. Like you're saying, that's how you get in trouble. Like you can't force it if it's not there. But it's just consistent effort, right? Like it's consistently putting out the marketing, not stopping when things start dipping. Like consistently marketing, consistently trying to find new talent and hire, consistently building the processes in the business. I think if you keep doing that, which is where I'm at, like I'm continuing to do the things to keep us growing and keep us going, things will turn out okay, right? Like, and when the market is prime and things are great, like we're going to be able to scale quickly. Like we're going to be able to scale right back up where we're at and keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that took all the risk and like were buying at the wrong prices, like they're really sweating. Like they may be gone next year if things keep going down. Like how many losses can you take?
I know it. That's how.
It's like
Luckily, we're we got a flip in Platt Park right now that I'm fully expecting to take $100,000 hit on. It's
crazy.
It's just
That hurts.
we bought it in July of last year. It's just the thorn in my side, and
Yeah.
it's one that I'll remember forever. Right?
Yeah.
You just won't forget that deal. But
you learn. I guarantee you learned a ton from it.
oh my God, yeah, it's what's helped me actually build my business.
Yeah.
Right? The mistakes that I learned there. Luckily, it's only one mistake. Luckily, I can recover from that. We've got enough capital, and we'll be fine. But
Yeah.
it's such a painful lesson.
Yeah, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you get better.
Hopefully,
like you take those hits. Like you make those mistakes, and it's a lesson.
Yeah.
This is another. It's like
it's a scar, man. I'm gonna wear this
another
scar and I'm gonna show it off, and it's like, check this
yeah.
one out, and I got through it. So
and you want to do it again, you'll be better next time. Like that's how you grow. That's how you get better.
Yep. Let me ask you about. So we've talked about reliability and the things that you're doing to create reliability.
Yep.
And maybe that's on one side of the spectrum. But on the other side, let's talk about upside plays. Let's talk about things that, and you've been kind of touching on, lightly pressing on these commercial deals, lightly pressing on these land and these development deals. What's your upside play?
Like where am I going? What am I trying to
What are you seeing as an opportunity? Again, I think of there's a tool that we describe as called a barbell.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think about a barbell, you don't load weight in the middle of the bar.
Yeah.
Means it either needs to be working its way towards reliability or it needs to be a massive upside play.
Yeah.
And so what's your upside play?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it's just continuing to buy rentals consistently every single year and buying a number of them. Like that's my upside play, right? Like I stash those away. I keep buying them. It helps me grow my business because I keep buying them. They keep going up in value, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's going to drop off here for a bit, but I'm buying them at a discount.
Yeah.
So I'm not buying them at market value. So I feel safe there. But that's my upside plays, continuing to buy rentals, continuing to buy more property to hold. And then my strategy really is I don't leverage them to the gill. Like I don't go and leverage them as hard as I can and pull out the cash. I do leverage them, but I do it in a different way. I'm not going and getting mortgages where my payment's higher. I like to have the lower payment and put lines of credit on them and use those lines of credit in the business.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my strategy and my play is to have chunks of equity in these rentals that I'm buying and then leverage them with lines of credit where, I don't
keep
making
cash, keep pouring it into wealth building.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel safer that way because they're not I don't have 90% LTV on my rentals, right?
Yeah.
Like these are a lot lower. So it's kind of it's a hedge for me.
Yeah.
Stuff goes wrong in the flipping world and things go completely south.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got the rentals to fall back on, like I can sell those out, right?
That's right.
And get out of it. That's kind of my backup.
Yeah.
Right. But I would say that's what I do. I just continue to buy rentals. I'm trying to buy bigger commercial assets, and we're figuring out strategies to market to those right now, and doing marketing in the commercial world. And so
that's cool.
I'm going that direction to learn that game because there's bigger deals, there's bigger upside, and I want to be in that. Like I want to get from the $500K house flip to the $5 million warehouse or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the residential guys want to get into commercial. All the commercial guys want to get into industrial. All the industrial guys want to get into private equity.
Yeah, and I think you don't know until you know, right? Until you start doing and going through those channels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, this is a great conversation. So, how can folks, here in Denver, get a hold of you if they wanted to bring you a deal, if they wanted to, learn more about flipping, things like that? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I do a lot of connecting with people locally. That's why I love doing these podcasts, because I like to get out there and meet new people and kind of meet everybody in this world. I love working with agents and wholesalers and just anybody that's in the business. I want to know and I want to connect with them. But the best way to find me probably, I would say, is Facebook. I'm not crazy active there, but I'm attentive. Like if somebody messages me, I'm going to get back to them. I try to be high on my communication, and I don't care if you're at the very bottom or you're at the very top. If you message me, I'm going to reply to you and say something. As long as you're not trying to sell me your $9.99 course on crypto, whatever.
It's more expensive than that. No,
okay, whatever.
I'm kidding. So, if you got fix and flips in Denver, I mean, this is the guy to talk to. Like, bring them to him. He'll buy them. Buys a couple of them a year or a month. So, is it all over town, or is it any specific area?
Yeah, we have covered a wide area. We're still doing deals in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Really? So that's as north as we go. Cheyenne, Wyoming. I started doing flips up there a couple of years ago, buying rentals as well. So we're all the way up in Cheyenne, and we've been all the way down to Pueblo. I would say right now we're mostly focused on Denver Metro and northern Colorado. And Cheyenne, we're still doing stuff in Cheyenne. Springs and Pueblo, I've definitely slowed down in and have done less just because it's so far, and we just don't have the capacity. Like to send my project manager down there is literally.
He must be in like Longmont or something, so he can get up to Cheyenne and Denver. Is that where he's at?
He's in Brewfield actually. So, yeah. But going down to Colorado Springs or Pueblo, like that's a full day. Right?
You're fighting the traffic both ways.
Yeah, and so to do like one flip down there, I've realized like I gotta tighten that up, and so we're more focused on Denver Metro right now, and kind of staying that little circle. I think it'll be easier for us, and I've spread us a bit too thin by doing flips in all these random places. I mean, we've done them like out in the country, like in Peyton and Larkspur, and and Bailey. We've done a number of flips in Bailey. Like we've gone all over the place. So I will say, like, I'm not saying I won't buy there. If it's a good enough deal, I'll buy anywhere, right? But we're mostly Denver Metro based.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if you got any good flips, bring them to Kyle. It was a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.